Hi, I'm glad you could join us for Life Lessons with Barbara. I'm your host, Barbara Aline Johnson, and I'm here to share lessons I've learned from my own life experiences as well as those I've learned from others. I'm also owner and lead life coach of BEJ and Associates LLC, a transformational life coaching and consulting company. My team and I specialize in helping individuals and organizations identify and dismantle or work around barriers blocking their way to success. We offer life coaching virtually and other services as well. So why don't you just check out our website, bej-associates.com. And if you have questions about anything you read there or see there, contact us. You'll find a link that will allow you to do that. You can leave your contact information and we'll get back to you. Now, I want to take a quick minute to thank Wall Street Radio for this wonderful platform that allows me and my guests to spend time with you. Thank you, Black Wall Street Radio. You rock. I also want to bring to your attention that mellow tune playing in the background. That's After the Rain by the phenomenal Lois Lady Mac McMorris, an extraordinary lead guitarist and an amazing performer. It was a real treat to finally have her as our guest on last week's show. But if you missed it, all is not lost. Just go to our website, bej-associates.com/radio. Scroll down to the program archive where you can see as well as hear all the shows we've done. You can also download After the Rain, access Lady Mac's website. Write that down, bej-associates.com/radio. Now, let me tell you about today's show. Again, I am happy to present another member of the BEJ and Associates family, and her name is Dory Staley. Her journey has been fascinating, filled with tons of life lessons that you may relate to. Stay tuned to hear from our guest, Dory Staley. You're listening to Life Lessons with Barbara. Hi, Dory.
Hey, how are you doing, Barbara? Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure, and thanks for accepting the invitation. Anyway, so I want to just kind of give the audience a little background to explain how we connected, and how you got involved with BEJ and Associates. Okay. And so before you came in on the scene, before you had anything to do with this, okay, here's the weird thing. I was meeting with some women, and we were trying to kind of get a women's mastermind group going. And that never happened, but the good thing that came out of that was that I found out about you. So one day I came to the meeting. You don't even know this story. One day I came to the meeting.
Yeah, I know. That's news to me.
I never got around to telling you. Cheyenne Kramer was in the meeting, and she's the one who knew you. So anyway, I came in and I was all excited because I had been to the dentist's office. And I know that didn't sound right. But anyway, what made me excited about that is that the dental hygienist, somehow it came up that, I was saying my mind is racing and I'm all over the place, and, and blah, blah, blah. And so she said, right away she said, oh, I've been there. I know what's going on. You have ADHD or something, something. And I just thought everybody would be so happy for me that I thought I had a solution. And boy, did I get a totally different response. And Cheyenne especially.
I bet.
Yeah, she said, before you do anything, you need to talk to a friend of mine, and she gave me your information.
But you know what's important for the listeners to realize is you said some important things that are very, very common, but they were red flags for me. Number one is you allowed a dental hygienist to diagnose you. I mean, let's think about this. Even though she might think she is, and she's taking Adderall or whatever, people are funny. They go around with assuming that, well, I've got this, so do you. Yeah. And that's not always the case. In my 20 years of working with kids, especially with ADHD and ADD issues, I found out that 99% of them did not need any kind of medication whatsoever. And what we were looking at was not what society calls ADD or ADHD. Those are acronyms that were created, by the way. I hate to say it, people are going to get mad, but hey, look it up, people.
Hey,
these were created by... I'm just telling it like it is. You know, they didn't exist back in the day. It all suddenly popped up that this mysterious disorder, air quotes, and that everybody suddenly had. Well, of course, let's think about it. A lot of the studies were backed by the pharmaceutical companies. Hello?
Hey.
So you don't think there was a connection there? You don't think that it was in their best interest to label every kid in the nation who was slightly hyperactive or couldn't pay attention or couldn't sit still? Most of them were boys. Many of them were minorities. Nobody saw this pattern established. And I sure did. So I reported some school districts and things because their numbers were way too high. And I said, you're not looking at the underlying issues that are causing the symptoms. Well, and that's where Dory's Top 10 got created, and that started my groundbreaking study called the Gifted ADHD Connection.
Yes,
because giftedness,
I love that part.
Is the same thing.
Instead of it being a defect or some disorder.
Right, I see the positive side.
That impairs you.
Yeah.
It's really an offshoot from something really good. Some genius that you
right. And that's why parents would actually hire me to go to the schools and things as an educational consultant to present my viewpoint, especially if I worked one-on-one with the student. And I would point out after they went through the whole litany of problems with this kid, with the student sitting right there. And I've seen students brought to tears at these meetings. And I thought, is that really necessary? Well, let me tell you what I see. And here's all the good stuff that you guys kind of missed. Just saying. So yeah. And so the student got something different to a point. You can only go to a point in public schools because they're limited. Teachers are busy and, they don't always have teachers' aides and things like that. And some of the accommodations these kids need just feasibly was not possible within the public school system. So I recommended other alternatives and other educational preferences.
That was the reason why, I really went after you to be a part of this. Of the BEJ and Associates, because at the time I was kind of wide open about who we would target to offer our services to as consultants.
Right.
And but that just resonated so much with me because first of all, first Cheyenne and then you brought the awareness to me that this issue affects adults as well as children. And, and then, I was all for anything that could be an alternative to pharmaceuticals in treating this. And because at the same time, my niece was struggling with this, but with her, I think he was 7 and they had recommended these Ritalin or something for him, and she really didn't want to do that. And so I just thought, wow, more people need to know that there's an alternative and that it is tied to exceptionalism. What's the term what's the correct term for that?
Giftedness. Giftedness. It's I studied for a master's in gifted education, and I got to a point, and the professors told me that I was beyond the program, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to save some money and then just do this on my own.
Oh, you could.
And that's when I started my business. Yeah, they asked me to come back and teach. And I said, well, I guess I don't need to be paying you for this degree then, because it doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah.
So I just continued on my own. I already had the MBA, and I thought, really, do I need more letters after my name? I had already been doing a lot of this work with students, and when I was presenting my findings, there was a huge disconnect, and I just said, look, the kids that I'm seeing have IQs of 150 plus, but nobody knew it because nobody bothered to test them because they weren't looking for anything good. They were looking for all the things that were wrong and how do we fix all this stuff. So I explained to them, my professors were the ones that identified me. I did not know because we didn't use the term gifted way back when because it sounds so snooty, right? Adults especially don't want to use it. But if you look back over the years and years and generations, if you can think of highly, I won't use the gifted term, but let's just say extremely creative, talented, and super bright people over time, all of them had different ways of learning, including Einstein, Edison, and many more, and they were labeled. And the teachers thought there was something wrong with them. Well, it turned out to be something very, very right. And that actually was one of my first talks was, it's all right by me. And I explained to these teachers in the audience what it's like to be a right-brained learner. Right-brained learners don't think sequentially. We don't do step-by-step. We go from point A to point F. I can get the answer to math problems without doing all the steps, and so could many of my tutoring students. And the teachers would get all freaked out and bent out of shape and thinking that, obviously if you got the answer that fast, you cheated. No, we just do it differently. We visualize things, or we draw it out, or we do it differently. There's at least 3 ways to get a math problem anyway. It's not just one right answer. So what happens is the students get pigeonholed. If they don't learn exactly the way that the teacher teaches, it's assumed that they have some sort of learning disability. And that's not the case.
Right.
We don't test well. It doesn't mean these kids aren't right. It just means they need more time to convert the pictures that are in their heads into letters or numbers. They can do it. It's just they're big pictures. They see all the parts and how everything fits. They don't do step-by-step sequential learning the way that most teachers and most schools teach. It just doesn't work for us. So it's not the kids that are broken, it's the schools, just saying.
Right.
Not all. Some teachers are awesome and they're doing a great job and they get it and they're individualizing, they're trying their very best. But most of these kids, they've never had their IQs tested or anything.
But the goal is conformity. I mean, you gotta
conform to the norm.
To conform. And anybody that deviates from that is going to be labeled. And I
hate to go there, but I'm going to go there. It's so Orwellian if you think about it. When you think about all these sci-fi and Ray Bradbury and all that, they all have like short stories or full-length novels about how they would give students or people, a special pill or whatever to make them conform.
Yeah. And they walk robotically and they, and talk in monotone.
And I made a joke once. Why don't you just put barcodes on their wrists and we can just scan them on the way in, because you're creating standardized students with all the standardized testing, all this teaching to the test. It's killing creativity, not only in the students, but let's talk about the teachers. That's one reason why I said I'm out. I was actually thinking about going for my teacher certification and all that. And that program, the professors told me that you're too creative and the school district isn't ready for somebody like you yet. And I was heartbroken because I thought, if they're not ready for me, what about all these kids who are trapped in a system that doesn't work for them? It doesn't allow them to use their gifts and talents and actually show these teachers and their peers what they can do. What are they told? Dial it back. That's a little bit too much for this class. We're only allowing you to go up to here, maybe. If they have a kid who's like way up here, they don't know what to do with them. And so those are the kids that bounce out and wind up in homeschooling. I've helped many, many kids make the break to homeschooling. I feel like I'm springing them from prison. I hate to say it, but there's some kids that they They just need a different learning
And
environment.
then,
It might be homeschooling, it might be a charter school, it might be
yeah, I was going to say a
Montessori,
lot of
whatever
them don't
works.
have
But
that luxury of being schooled at home.
right, right. So
So
you've
they
got to
get
choose
trapped.
something that fits. And the same happens to adults. In fact, during the recession, I had to get a day job, because my businesses were kind of like slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was running scared, right? Nobody wanted to spend any money on tutoring or consulting. And that was the business number one. And my other business was booking local young rock bands and solo artists. And those contracts all started drying up. And I thought, oh, shoot, now what? So, okay, I get a day job. It wasn't education. And for the first time in, I don't know, 30 years or so, I had to work in an office with other people. And I thought, oh, no, I couldn't concentrate worth beans. And I thought, oh, I feel like one of my students, people were walking in and out of the office constantly. Oh, bright, shiny thing, and there I was flipping numbers and making all kinds of mistakes on all these computer programs and things. And I tried to tell my boss, really, I have an MBA in finance. I really know how to do this, but it's so distracting for me. And they finally gave me an office with just one other guy, turned out to be another musician. We got along fine. We just closed the door. We put in earbuds. I liked his music, though. We had the same musical taste. So sometimes we listened to each other's music, and sometimes we put in earbuds to block everybody out. And that worked really, really well. And that's when I discovered the power of drumming, because I am a percussionist, as you know. And you probably don't know that that's when I started experimenting with, can drumming help with stress relief and ADHD issues? And the answer is yes and yes.
Yes.
Did it during my lunch hour.
Before you go there, because that's exciting.
Yes.
That was another thing I was really excited about that you do, and totally understand. Well, how that helps and is calming and all that. It's a wonderful thing. But before we move on to that, let's go back and tell me, how did you even get into researching and studying about this so-called disorder called ADHD in children as well as adults?
Well, that's funny, because I really didn't plan. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur and an accidental homeschooler. I didn't plan on either, but it was because our kids were mislabeled in school and recommended for Ritalin back in 1995. Our daughter was in third grade. Our son was in kindergarten. And I had never even heard of attention deficit disorder, as it was called then. It was ADD. There was no H in the mix at all. And I didn't even know what it was, but I thought something is wrong here, because as a mom, you just know. I said, something doesn't feel right. And I explained to them that what I'm seeing at home is something completely different than what you're seeing in school. So let's compare notes here. They never ask students or test them to see where they are when they enter school. Our kids had taught themselves how to read when they were little. I'm not kidding. I had an 18-month-old toddler in the back seat of the car, our son, who was actually identifying words and numbers and logos and things. 18 months old. I didn't think that was unusual. I thought every kid could do that. I had no point of comparison. And our daughter was reading chapter books by the time she entered school. I think she taught herself at age 4. Again, I didn't use flashcards. I didn't test them. I just read to them a lot. They were very curious. They were very creative. And they were pretty musical. And they got to school thinking, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to learn so many new things. And what happened was, it started out fine, but it went downhill from there. And our daughter got very, very discouraged. If you take a very bright and creative learner and she realizes that her needs are not being met, 3 things will happen to these kids. They're either going to act out, they're going to tune out, or they're going to drop out. Take your pick. Obviously, the young ones aren't going to drop out, but she was just like, why do I need to go to school? What's the purpose of school? I'm not learning anything new. And I said, really? She said, I'm teaching all the other kids. I said, ooh, how's that fair? And then they wanted to recommend her for Ritalin because she wasn't on task, because she would get involved with something interesting. And this is what happens to our brains, you know. It's like, ooh, we can hyper focus on areas of interest. I could play music all day. I could write stuff all day because I really enjoy both of those things. But when you put the brakes on a very, very motivated learner and say, sorry, we've got to switch gears now and go to something else that you probably don't like, of course there's going to be some pushback. She might not cooperate. And then it's hard to mentally switch because you're already in imagination land. You know, you got 1,001 ideas, and now you've got to, you know, suddenly do math or something that, you know, you don't really want to do. So these kids get labeled as defiant. There's ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. I'm sure but a lot of these kids, they really don't have that. They're just creative kids that don't want to cooperate.
And they're frustrated because they're
doing their own thing. And they're frustrated.
But they're not stimulated enough. And you know, there's a whole lot of things. But instead of the teacher
so
looking at themselves, they want to blame the child. And there sometimes are consequences.
So nobody asked. Nobody asked me if the kids knew how to learn to read beforehand. And when I told them, they didn't believe me. I had to bring in books that they were reading at home. And I had to bring in writing samples in our daughter's actual handwriting, not typed, because they didn't believe me. I said, she is writing 10-chapter novels in first grade, second grade, somewhere in there, complete with a prologue, an epilogue, semicolons, and perfect grammar. So if all of your first and second, so if all of your first and second graders can do this, then I guess they're all gifted, because you know, that was the thing in Boulder, Colorado. It was like Lake Wobegon. You know, everyone is gifted.
So that's
and I said, well, everybody has gift.
That's where
in
you
Boulder,
were
Colorado.
then.
So that's where we were, and everybody was gifted. So they totally dismantled all the programs that they had in place for gifted, talented, and creative kids. They had a program called TAG, Talented and Gifted, gone. And they thought it was elitist and racist. And I said, isn't that interesting? Because you're not using the right tests to identify these kids. So you've created your own self-fulfilling prophecy. Look at who you have in your talented and gifted programs. Do you see a whole lot of minorities? Well, there you go. Don't get me started there. But anyway, the information I was being given, I flipped over the packets and I said, oh, look at that, Ciba-Geigy. So all of your information was being given to the teachers and the doctors from the pharmaceutical company. At that point, it was Ciba-Geigy, who was the makers of Ritalin. It's now Novartis.
Oh.
Yes, and they had the parent advocacy group called CHAD, which is still in place.
Heard of that. Yeah.
And I know a lot of people don't send me nasty emails, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying that way back when there were some issues there where there was some, let's just say there were some very suspicious connections, and there were class action lawsuits filed, and CHAD was involved, and so was the APA and the drug companies as well. And so I used to make a joke,
American
something's not right here. I think
was that
APA,
yes.
American Psychiatric Association.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, your pharmaceutical companies, because all three were involved with in essence, pushing for more labeling and for more meds. And even some of the parents in CHAD actually petitioned to have more Ritalin produced. It's all documented. You can look it all up. So that's when I started doing my talks to homeschoolers and other groups. And I said, again, don't shoot the messenger. But I really did think that CHAD stood for Ciba has a direct distributor.
Mm-hmm. So
that's just think about it, because, yeah.
And
so that's when I decided they asked to be homeschooled, and we bailed out of school, and they improved tremendously. They learned and accelerated at rates that most people would not believe. And I just let them do their own thing and follow their own interests and their own passions and spend as much time as they wanted on their creative pursuits. And man, did we have a blast. It lasted 12 years, which I didn't expect. Our kids were working at levels well above what the school district could ever have provided, because realistically speaking, they just couldn't have bumped our daughter up to, say, high school level in English when she was only in 3rd or 4th grade. I mean, every kid learns at different levels in different subjects. So if math was not, like, not every subject, they were not 16 years ahead in every subject, that's an exaggeration. In math they struggled, so I had to present math in a different way so that they got it. But yeah, homeschoolers, forget it. I wanted to have a bumper sticker made to dispel the myth that homeschoolers don't socialize and never get out. No, they're not tied to the kitchen table all day. My bumper sticker was going to read as follows: if I am homeschooling, with home in capital letters, why am I always in my car? Because we were always going somewhere, going to some homeschooling group or some activity, a field trip, a class. Oh my gosh, homeschoolers have so many opportunities available to them. And homeschoolers here in this state are considered private schools. So they fall under the private school category. They have nothing to do with the public schools unless they want to, unless they want to participate in a couple of things.
Do they offer support in some organized activities for children who are homeschooled?
Homeschoolers do everything on their own. There is no organization that supports them. They get their own textbooks, they develop their own learning plans and their own curriculum on their own. They can join different organizations and church groups, for example, that have homeschooling co-ops, it's called, where they have classes available that you can sign up for, and sometimes you pay and sometimes it's just an exchange. I was in a situation like that where I taught different subjects in exchange for something else. But yeah, there's all sorts of opportunities available. People don't realize that many people in the homeschooling community, many of the parents like me, have advanced degrees. So when people say, oh, how are you qualified to teach your kids? Hello? Again, professors ask me to teach the class, so we're not even going to go there.
Okay, well, let me insert a couple of things. Okay,
Sure.
For me, my daughter was in the gifted program as well. And just one story, at home, she learned to write in cursive, like in age 3 or so. And so my face froze, it tickled me. But anyway.
Yes, you're freezing.
Yeah. And so, anyway, and she took it to school to show her teacher, and she got really chastised and reprimanded about it,
Wow.
And now you see what's happened. They don't even teach it anymore. They don't teach children to write in cursive anymore.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, so that was one thing. Now, I was a single mother, and so I had to work. There was no way I could homeschool. And so I guess what I'm...
Yes and no.
Well, okay. Well, I didn't know.
There are plenty of single moms
for me.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, if anybody's out there listening.
Yes. Please let them know what the alternatives are.
Yeah, a lot of homeschoolers work from home. They either have a situation with their employer where they can do that, or like me, they just start their own businesses, and it's a great way to teach your kids how to become entrepreneurs, because you're doing it. They can see what you're doing. They can be involved in your business, and they can go off and create. I know a lot of homeschool teens who started their own business, especially in computer programming, that were getting contracts, making big money as teens. Wow. Doing web design, graphic design, all kinds of different things. So yeah, it helps foster different things. So yeah, it's not easy for homeschooling, for a single parent to homeschool, but there are lots of people out there who do it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for letting us know that.
Sure. Didn't know this is going to. We talk so much about homeschooling today, but there you go.
No. Well, but we have on this program, we've touched on entrepreneurship in all different areas, and so that's always been kind of an ongoing theme here, especially because this is about my life lessons, and that's part of my life. So that's not real foreign to my audience. And so the only other thing before we move from this topic is, so how did you also have expertise in terms of adults who have those so-called symptoms. How did you?
Right, right. Yeah, I always
that?
say ADHD symptoms, but I don't like to label it as a deficit or a disorder because it sounds so negative. That's assuming that we're broken or defective, and I don't like that. So I'll use the acronym because a lot of people know it, but I give them my definition. ADD stands for a delightful dreamer. And
Ah,
ADHD is a definitely hyper drummer, and I'm both. So there we go. But yeah, it's either you're imagining things and you're very creative and on the ADD side, or you got lots of ideas and a lot of energy. So those can be very, very positive spins. And I always tell, especially the kids and the teens, you've got to learn how to use your powers for good.
yes.
With great power comes great responsibility. So they've got gifts. They just need to know how to use them and how to function in the very left-brained world of school or work. Because let's face it, not all jobs, certainly not your creative jobs, but there are some situations like the one that I was in where there's a lot more administrative functions of the job than I imagined. It was supposed to be sales and marketing. I'm good in front of a crowd. I was supposed to be out there on the road a lot. But when it get down to the spreadsheets and all that, it got really boring for me. But yeah, the left brain sequentials, put things in the box, that's where we kind of have difficulties. But you know what? Not everybody is good in everything, right? And even your super creative entrepreneur. No, in fact, these traits are very, very common in just about any entrepreneur out there and just about any CEO. But what happens is they work within their own genius zone, and they hire people to do the other stuff. It's a win-win. And let other people use their skills, maybe their administrative gifts or whatever, let them shine. And that gives us the freedom to be able to create our big picture ideas and concepts and pull things together and work in that realm and not have to worry about all the little dotting the I's and crossing the T's stuff, which we can be detail oriented, but we're much better with creative functions.
Right. That kind of boggles me to try to think that way. So to be able to to be able to consider that what has been a challenge for me, it could be related or a symptom of some sort of genius that I may have. I like that, and I can, that was music to my ears. That it could be seen in a positive light.
Right. Well, you've got all that creativity because keep in mind, just about every student I worked with, whether or not they were high IQ, most of them were. Most of them turned out to be, and I could usually pick this up, believe it or not, in about 5 minutes just by talking to the kid. I can pretty much estimate about where their IQ level is because I asked them a set of questions that most teachers would never ask them anyway, and that gives me the indication of how the kid thinks and where they are. So you've got that combination of high levels of creativity, high levels of intelligence, but then what they call asynchronous development, and that is uneven development, where, for example, you might have a 4-year-old who can do algebra, but he can't tie his shoes. Or you might have an adult who can do something really, really complicated, like people. I had no idea that I would be able to do videos, for example. I love to do the editing and all that because originally it was it's too techy. But it turns out that I'm pretty good at it and I can do it very, very quickly. And other people struggle and it takes them hours. So some things we find really easy, other people find hard, and vice versa. So this is what really confounds a lot of teachers and parents because they don't know what they're looking at. But they also aren't looking at the underlying medical issues. In my study, that's what I was talking about, Dory's Top 10. There are underlying, undetected medical issues in every student that I evaluated. The top ones were hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar. That will manifest itself as ADD or ADHD because when your blood sugar drops, you check out. And I've had this for many, many years, so I can speak to this with a certain amount of authority because I know what it feels like. You cannot focus. If people are talking to you, your blood sugar is so low that you feel like you're going to pass out. So You try to focus and like nod, but you can't. And until you get the right combinations of food in your system, it's really hard to reverse that blood sugar drop. So a lot of them have that. Some have undetected allergies, asthma, sensitivities to food dyes and preservatives. Red food dyes are really biggie, especially amongst the boys. And just different scenarios that people hadn't considered. I have had several students that came to me and, oh yeah, I got ADD. And the main thing was they were having trouble reading the board. They didn't need stimulants. They needed classes.
Yeah.
Nobody bothered to check their vision. And it wasn't just the distance thing. They had an eye muscle issue. How did I know? Because they were taking a book like this, happens to be mine, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And they were like looking at it sideways, and they're trying to read it sideways like this. And I said, do you always read a book like that? And they said, yeah. I said, dude, you got an eye muscle problem. Here's the name of an eye doctor. And that's all it was. So people need to consider what else is going on. I can tell by looking at the child's skin, nails, and what they call allergic shiners under the eyes. You can also tell by looking at the nose. If there's wrinkles above the nose, they're doing this a lot. Why? Because their nose itches because they have allergies. So I would refer these kids out to other specialists just to confirm my suspicions. Okay, I mean, my nose all red. But, and I would have referral partners, chiropractors, allergists, special pediatricians that I know were not going to like whip out the prescription pad right away. They were actually going to take the time to evaluate the kid properly and extensively. Now with HMOs and everything else, you got 5 minutes. Okay, yep. So you think he's got ADD? Okay, here you go. Here is a prescription. That's what they did to me. 5 minutes. They looked at our son. They didn't do a complete workup. They didn't test for anything. They just said, do you think, what are you seeing? I said, teachers are telling me he's super hyper. Yeah, he kind of is, but he was only 5. All boys are hyper, especially little ones. Preschoolers and early elementary kids should not be put on stimulants. I'm sorry. It's just part of being a boy.
Yeah.
They've got to get their yai-yas out. In fact, if a kid is put on Ritalin, they're not supposed to be given stimulants under the age of 12 because their bodies and brains have not developed fully. And I've had this happen on numerous occasions. A teen or early college kid will come to me and say, I can't enter the military because, wait for it, they've got Ritalin or a stimulant on their record. Nobody told them that, especially Ritalin. That can keep them out of the military.
Oh my goodness.
So, and they were devastated because they wanted to enter ROTC or something like that, or junior ROTC.
And they don't find out until then? That's
well, because nobody told them. Because, you know, when you're 7 years old, you're not thinking of going into the military, right? So nobody thinks about that long-term consequence. It just so happens that as the kid got older, it developed into a career goal, but the student was blocked from that goal happening because they weren't admitted. Wow. So maybe the rules have changed with the military since then, but because it's a type 2 controlled substance nearly identical to cocaine. That's Ritalin. And many of your stimulants are, in that type 2 category. So you've got to be really, really careful what you give your kids. There are long-term side effects that may or may not go away. Got to be careful of that as well. So as for me, I'm too sensitive, and so is our son, to just about every medication out there, even over-the-counter ones. If it says you have a 1 in 10,000 chance of developing these symptoms, we will. So it's in our best interest not to go that route and to avoid it at all possible costs. So that's when I had to look at other ways to alleviate the symptoms without using stimulants. Now, for some kids, parents have told me, we've tried everything. It's the only thing that works. Okay. Then, you got to do what you got to do. But if you don't, then don't.
Well, you told me when we met and you were telling me all this, and I was just, my mind was blown because I always suspected, I'm suspicious of pharmaceuticals anyway, especially when there hasn't been a battery of tests or whatever. They just base it on behavior and, and a couple of folks' interpretation. And then there you go. The kid is subjected to it.
Because as you know, the diagnostic checklist is very, very subjective, and anybody could fit those symptoms at any given time. And age is also a factor. If you want to go there, ladies, let's just talk about when you reach a certain age, hormones change. Same with the teens, though. You know, once your hormones change, then you will have focusing issues, like it or not. So it does happen. Nobody asks about that.
Yes, exactly. So, well, I mean, there's so much. You are a wealth of information. And what I was hoping to do, while you were an associate with BEJ and Associates, I was hoping to get the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to put you out there somehow, especially to get you into schools or PTA meetings or something, where folks
Right.
become aware that
Exactly.
there
This
are
is,
options, other options.
I did not know that I was onto something back in 1995 when I developed my whole flow chart that, it just hit me in the middle of the night. Talk about divine intervention. I was trying to figure out what the missing piece was. What was the number one trigger for all these symptoms that I was seeing and all the underlying medical issues and all that. And once I figured that out, I thought, well, surely somebody else has figured this out 20 years later. And I don't think anybody has. So here I am with all this information that I would love to share, but I'm going to be honest, some schools don't want me to come in because somebody who's got a platform of keeping kids off of stimulants, when they find it very, very effective to help get those kids to keep those, keep
them
their
still
bottoms on their
quiet.
chairs, to keep
Yes.
them still. I even have had teachers, well, what do you do with these kids if they're not on stimulants? And I said, let them move around. What? Let them move around.
Yeah.
These are my drumming kids. Whenever I do a drum session with kids, I always start with, raise your hands if you're hyper. And all the hands go up just about. And I go, yeah, me too. Guess what? You now have permission to move and to whack on drums and to make some noise. How does that sound? And they're all like, finally, because nobody gives them an outlet for all their extra energy. It's not natural to sit in a chair all day. Kids and adults, I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't built for that. And it's really, really hard, especially, a lot of these kids that are labeled ADHD, they're mostly boys, as I said, and they're usually very, very thin, which means they don't have a whole lot of body fat.
Mm-hmm.
And you put them in a hard chair all day. Ask me how uncomfortable that is. As a skinny chick who gets a lot of skinny jokes, let me tell you, it ain't fun. So, you've got to figure out how to make these kids more comfortable. We're supposed to be giving all students a free and appropriate public education. Everybody, in special ed knows that acronym, FAPE. It's not just for your special ed students. It's for your gifted students as well who have ADHD traits. It's the exact same thing, actually. If I put the two symptoms up on a slide, you will see that ADHD and giftedness are exactly the same. One's just more positive.
I don't give up. Keep spreading the word.
Yeah, we're putting the word out there. I will come out to your school or organization. If it's a workplace, I could even talk about ADD in the workplace and things that you can do to help people with the symptoms to, keep them on task. Goal setting, time management, just make their workspace a little bit easier, and their expectations need to change for highly creative people who have trouble focusing. So it's good for workplace talks. It's also good for schools, churches, whatever. I can adapt my talks to any audience, and sometimes even change the titles. So just tell me what you need, and I'll make it happen. If you want me to bring a drum or 2 or 3 or 10 or 50, I can to make it even more fun, so I can explain how the drumming became the final piece of the puzzle, and how quickly it works and how much fun it is.
We're ready now for that transition. And
we have time.
Tell the
Okay.
audience that we will have information on the website, bej-associates.com/radio. You guys have heard that a million times. That's where you'll go, and give me a day or two and I'll get it posted for you, so that if you want to get in touch with Dory, if you have an opportunity for her to speak or whatever, or if you just maybe want some one-on-one consultation, you can check her out. So now we're going to transition to the drumming. And I mean, you are just, like I
Mhm.
said, a wealth of information. But I want to make sure we get
People look at my website and go,
before
oh my
the
gosh.
end.
It's like, hey, I've pared it down.
Yeah.
Used to
Okay.
be worse.
So I want to talk about the drumming too, because that was
Yeah,
another area I was excited about, because I think
it's very
it's
different.
so good to get people. It helps for me and others I know. It helps to get you out of your head and into
Yeah,
a feeling place where, real change can happen. And it's just very soothing,
right.
and a whole bunch of good things about it. So let's talk about that, but save some time for your book. And I think we have about
Okay,
15 minutes left. Okay.
sure. Yeah, so real quick, when I say the word drumming, a lot of people's minds, I could see it from their eyes, their mind goes somewhere else. So let me tell you what it's not. It's not a drum lesson. I don't come out with a full drum set, cymbals and kick drum and all that. No, it's not African drumming. It's not really a drum circle, even if you've been to a drum circle in downtown Raleigh or Asheville, if you're in North Carolina, or in your town or city. Those are kind of free-flowing things where somebody might start a beat and everybody just kind of goes with it. No, what I've developed are special techniques for different populations and for different issues. So what I use is an African drum known as a djembe, D-J-E-M-B-E. It's shaped like an hourglass. No, it's not a bongo. Every drum I bring out, people say, oh, here come her bongos. And no, that's something completely different. I don't usually bring those out. They're kind of heavy, but yeah. And what I do is it's an interactive drumming experience. It's called therapeutic drumming. You can look it up. There is training for this through Health Rhythms, is one organization. I've also trained with an organization called Drums and Disabilities, the DAD program. They use mostly drumsticks and drum pads, and that feels more like a lesson to me. So I prefer the African drumming or the African drums because of the vibration. You don't get a vibration when you're tapping on a drum pad or a table or your legs.
Oh.
Although I've done videos as a drum demo, I've just done a couple of quick Facebook Lives, and I let people know, if you don't have a drum on the other side there, just follow along with me and tap on your legs. It will help you focus, but it's the vibration of the drums and the sound waves that actually travel through your body. You kind of line everything up. I tell people it's like chiropractic without the cracking. It's a whole lot more fun. And it's very soothing because we'll start with a steady beat, like a heartbeat or something, boom, boom. Anybody can do that. And then I'll add to it. And then depending on what we need to be working on, I'll be sneaking in some special beats and some special techniques. If it's a group or an individual that needs focusing, I'll do different types of things. If somebody who needs stress relief or healing because they've dealt with trauma, I have worked with people with PTSD and other issues and some childhood issues. And I don't even have to say anything. I usually do say some affirmations, to give them some positive reinforcement and motivation, and which we'll go through it that way. But sometimes you just need to drum and listen to the beat. And I have them close their eyes even. Just listen to the beat and you get in the zone. And because you're tapping out, a very repetitive, very easy beat, anybody can do this. You don't need special training at all. You get in the zone and you automatically calm down and focus because you can't think of anything else because you're
And
just focusing on the beat. So it
remember
works really well.
when we had our first, I think it was the first meeting, or close to,
Mm-hmm.
we were just coming together as a group. And so
Yeah.
we planned to surprise the rest of the rest of the associates.
Yes, that's right.
And
Yeah.
so you and I, we hid the drums in the back room and everything. And then once
That's
everybody
right.
got situated, because we didn't all know each other all that well, and because
Yes.
there's a certain amount of reservation, holding back a little
Mm-hmm.
self-consciousness or whatever. And it was just amazing after we brought out the drums and you started taking us through this process, this routine. You could just see people just kind of just go into a place, and
Yeah. It's funny because the stress melts right off of you. That's why it's used a lot now in corporate settings for corporate team building, trying to get everybody on board with an idea, or maybe it's a new regime, or a takeover or whatever, and people are out of sorts. It's great for that. It's a great icebreaker activity for a lot of corporate events. If you want people to just relax and feel more comfortable with each other, number one, and also just to be able to let go a little bit. It's great to see guys in like ties and stuff to whack on that drum. I always joke, is that all you got? Come on, get the thing. You can't hurt the drums. If they're synthetic, I bring out synthetic. You really can't. They're pretty indestructible. And so it really helps people let go of their inhibitions. Plus, everybody laughs. Even if you mess up, people will laugh. There's people who say, but I don't have any rhythm. It doesn't matter. You will match everyone's rhythm at a certain point. You could always feel it. I call it the click. You feel the click, and then all of a sudden, there we go. Everybody's on the same page, and they're having a blast. And you might get people who get a little, they get into the zone, and they start feeling very, very confident, and they start busting out a couple of beats on their own. I always let people solo or throw in something extra if they're comfortable. And say, whoa, where'd that come from? You guys got skills, all right. Kids too. So, whoa. So you get in touch with your inner drummer. So if you ever want, it's way better than rock bands because you're actually hitting a drum. People say it's both relaxing and energizing at the same time. And that's exactly how stimulants work. And this has no side effects other than joy and stress relief. And you might go home and straighten out your closets. That's an unusual side effect. But people who clear out the mental clutter, they go home, and I get reports because I always tell people, let me know what happens in the next day or two.
I've done a couple of your sessions, and it really does.
Yeah. You didn't come on the Champagne Drum Cruise. That was pretty cool too. That's really calming. But you can drum in many different environments, many different ways. I bring out drums and percussion instruments like shakers and maracas and tambourines for people who are not ready to hit the drum yet. And then I make people switch so they at least get a chance to feel what it feels like to whack on a drum. So it's a win-win, and something that's becoming more mainstream now because they're seeing it as a health and wellness tool. As I mentioned, it's very, very quick, so you don't need to be doing this for like a whole year plus. Like, no offense to chiropractic, I love you guys, but it seems like you're never finished. So, and so for people who say, but will the effects stick? They usually do, but hey, if you're having fun, buy your drum and do this at home. They're really inexpensive, and as I said, it's much cheaper than buying stimulants and other medications. I've seen people with depression, actually, and all kinds of physical issues that felt much, much better, including me. After my accident, I felt much better after drumming every day for actually, it was just 2 weeks. I did what the doctors and the chiropractors couldn't figure out. So 15 minutes a day is about all I did. Sometimes a half an hour if I really got carried away. And all the pain from the accident, and I had sprains, tears, some fractures, concussion, whiplash, extreme tailbone pain, brain fog, something called temporary aphasia, you name it, I had it.
But you
After 2 weeks, everything was gone.
You can't jump into that like that without talking about what inspired you to write the book. I think that was your springboard, this accident. So, go ahead.
It's a great segue, actually, because once I realized, okay, I used the drumming on my lunch hour remember that day job during the recession? And I figured out that helped with stress, and it helped me focus better, and I wasn't flipping numbers. And then the accident happened, and I found out, okay, maybe this happened for a reason. I was looking for the missing piece to the puzzle in my study, the gifted ADHD connection. And I had no idea that it would not only help with ADHD symptoms, because again, a lot of brain fog. If I was a little, distracted after the accident, forget it. And once I saw all the connections and how everything fit, I thought, all right, I'm going to use this to help other people because it helped me. And then I decided that I'll write a book as well to help people who I can't work with one-on-one, although I can work virtually, but I wanted them to know that there's hope, that there are alternate ways of healing. And I also threw in a lot of business tips and
I
also mindset
know.
tips
That was
for
such a
creative
pleasant
types. That was an
surprise.
extra
Yeah,
bonus.
it
Yeah,
was.
you didn't expect. People thought it was just going to be my biography
I
or
tell you, it
something,
was
and I said, nah,
wonderful. It was a
it's a
wonderful
little bit of
read.
everything, but
It
yeah, it's
was
pretty quick
such a
read too because big font, and I cranked it out pretty quickly, and I wanted to put in tips because I was tired of creative types who were struggling. We're talking anything from your artists, your musicians, your designers, even a lot of your entrepreneurs, so creative, 1,001 ideas, but they could never put their ideas into action to convert their passion into profits. So I said, let me give them the game plan and the system that I had used with so many private clients. I kind of gave a taste and put different exercises into my book
wonderful.
so that they would at least have a guide to follow and different things to work on, from goal setting to time management to using social media effectively if you have your own business, to branding, and a lot about mindset so that they can understand why they're stuck and how far back this goes. A lot of people think it's just now because maybe they just lost a job. Those mindset issues and things that are blocking their success can often go way back to their childhood. So we don't go like super deep. It's not like a therapy sit on the couch kind of session, but a lot of this comes up and it can be resolved in just one or two drumming sessions. Sometimes it takes a little bit more. But anyway, so yeah, I wrote this book.
Yes.
It's probably going to be backwards on your
Lift it up a
screen.
little more.
Find your divine rhythm, a creative success formula. All right, so there's it's everything I do has a title or something to do with rhythm or drumming because I drum a lot. So the question is, are those Dory's legs or not? I'm not telling. Could be. And of course that's me on the back of the tambourine. But yeah, I wanted people to know that my unusual hobby of drumming, because a lot of people thought, oh my gosh, I started at age 47, people, playing percussion for a rock band at a church. No lessons. I just always wanted to try it out. Well, I passed the audition and the rest is history many, many years later. So I had no idea that my fun hobby of drumming would become a huge component of my business. If you would have told me this 10 years ago, I would have thought you were nuts.
Isn't it amazing
see, you never
how
know.
the universe just pulls it all together, and then you can figure out, well, that's why I went through that. That's why this, and see it all fit together like a puzzle. We are out of time.
And, in my So no worries. Yeah, in my case, I just want to say real quick, God had a plan for me, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And even though I had to endure some rough patches and a whole lot of pain that I wouldn't wish on anybody, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but he sure could. So that really helped me when everything comes together and you look back and go, oh, is that why I went through that? And see, keep the faith, keep on rocking, and if you can, keep on drumming.
Well, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a thing or two. And by the way, don't forget that you can see as well as hear this show again or any of our other shows at bej-associates.com/radio. And if you want to get in touch with me or Dory or any of my guests, look for the link that says Contact Us. Leave your contact information and we'll get back to you. Now, please join me in thanking Dory for today's life lesson. When she said that God had a plan for her life, know that God has a plan for yours too. So, no matter what's going on in your life now, trust that it will all eventually come together to make sense like it did for her. And until then, Dory says, keep the faith and keep on rocking. And if you can, keep on drumming or whatever gives you joy. Have a wonderful week. Namaste.
BEJ and Associates LLC offers a broad array of services, including life coaching to help achieve your personal goals, planning, facilitation, and presentations of workshops, seminars, and conferences, various customized services, diverse and personalized addictions intervention, and organizational staff development. We specialize in dismantling barriers to individual and organizational achievement. BEJ and Associates. Enlighten, inspire, motivate at bej-associates.com.